Hello, fanatics. My true crime fanatics, no less. Okay, so how you doing? It must be Sunday, right? So, yeah, it's true crime time. Okay, I'm in the middle of another video, and I kind of got distracted and went down a rabbit hole. I often do in these true crimes. I'm talking about a murder that happened, and this name came up, and I went and looked, and horrific. Okay, and I was going to leave it in the video, and there's another rabbit hole I've got to do as well, but that's more linked to the crime that happened that I was talking about in the first place. This crime happened 10 months before the one I was talking about, which I'm not going to tell you about because that'll be in next week's video. But yeah, this guy needed his own episode because I fell into this hole and I was just like, it's too complex to be thrown into another episode that has no bearing. It's just that this happened 10 months before the one I was talking about, which you'll find out next week. So I thought I'm going to give it its own episode. And here I am. So I'm going to do that. But first and foremost, this is a very old video of me kitting up. And I'm kitting up. Some days are like this. I have since completed the painting by Hannah Lipsky. It is available in the store. Yeah, I do like this image. It's the very depiction of mental health and how some days really are like this. And I've had one of those weeks. It's just been relentless. I've been viewing houses and I fell in love with one of them. Just one of them. And I paid the holding deposit and then he said, "I'm sorry, I've gone with someone else." I was like, oh, okay then. So I was devastated. Yeah, I was devastated. But it's okay. It's just a house. You know? So I brought myself back to centre and I've thrown myself into true crime. So I am doing a different episode that will be released next week. I am live tomorrow. I am going live and hopefully I'll have updates on the housing situation. But I am live tomorrow. I think I might just come and hang out rather than releases and whatnot because everything is up in the air. My personal life is up in the air. And thank you for the love and the support through this because it means a lot. Yeah, so I think I might just sit and dime paint and hang out with you guys because yeah, I just need that. So I'll hold off on releases for this week, but let's get to today's true crime because that's why we're here. Yeah, this guy, my gosh. So you know what to do by now, okay? You grab your projects, you come dime paint or craft along whatever you're sitting crafting with, or housework, you know, with me in your ears, whatever you're doing. And this guy, his name, John List. Have you heard of this? Are you ready to see his photo? You know, I like to show photos and you know, of who we're talking about or the victims and stuff like that. But are you ready to see what John List, who has shocked me to my core, looks like? Okay. And there you go. John List. List. My gosh. Okay, here we go. We're going to dive in and we're going to start with the background information and move through his life as depicted. And then we'll have a natter at the end, as we sometimes do. But there you go. Early life. Let's begin there. He was born in Bay City in Michigan, and he was the only child of German-American parents, John and Alma. Like his father, he was a devout Lutheran and Sunday school teacher. Interesting compared to his life and where that goes. He graduated from Bay City Central High School in 1943. That same year, he enlisted into the United States Army and served as a lab tech during World War II. His father died in 1944, and John List was discharged in 1946. He enrolled at the University of Michigan, where he earned a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in accounting. Wow, so he's really very brainy, and you find this a lot with serial killers, especially mass serial killers. They're very, very brainy. They just must have, along with being very, very brainy and having that academic skill, they must also have an inflated sense of ego because they think they can get away with everything. Okay, so in November 1950, as the Korean War escalated, he was recalled to active military service. And he is in Virginia, and he met Helen Morris Taylor. She was a widow of an infantry soldier killed in action in Korea, and she lived nearby with her daughter Brenda. John and Helen got married on December the 1st in 1951 in Baltimore, Maryland. I don't know how you say that. And the family moved to Northern California. The Army, recognising his accounting skills, reassigned him to the Finance Corps. After completion of his second tour in 1952, he worked for an accounting firm in Detroit, and as an audit supervisor at a paper company where his 3 children were born. In 1959, John had risen to general supervisor at the company's accounting department, but Helen, an alcoholic, had become increasingly unstable due to syphilis that she contracted from her first husband, which she did not disclose to John before their marriage. In 1960, his stepdaughter Brenda married and left the household. Then John moved the remainder of his family to Rochester, New York, to take a job with Xerox. There, he eventually became a director of accounting services. And in 1965, he accepted a position as a vice president and comptroller at a bank in Jersey City, in New Jersey, and moved with his wife, children, and mother into Breeze Knoll, a 19-room Victorian mansion located at 431 Hillside Avenue, Westfield, New Jersey. So what the hell happened? Okay, because he seems to be doing so very well in his life. He goes from one job to another job and excels. And then just, pretty much headhunted and here, be a vice president. I mean, that takes skill. On November the 9th in 1971, John murdered his entire immediate family using a semi-automatic handgun and his father's Colt .22 caliber revolver, because one gun wasn't enough. While his children were at school, he shot his wife Helen, who was 47 at the time, in the back of the head. Then his mother Alma, who was 84, above the left eye. As his daughter Patricia, 16, and younger son Frederick, 13, arrived home from school, John shot each of them in the back of the head. After making himself lunch, he drove to his bank to close both his and his mother's bank accounts, and then to Westfield High School to watch his elder son, John Frederick, 15, play in a soccer game. After driving John Frederick home, he shot him repeatedly because a misfire evidence showed that his son attempted to defend himself. He then placed the bodies of his wife and children on sleeping bags in the mansion's ballroom. He left his mother's body in her apartment in the attic. In a 5-page letter to his pastor found on the desk in his study, he claimed that he saw too much evil in the world and he had killed his family to save their souls. He then cleaned the various crime scenes, removed his own picture from all the family photos, and tuned a radio into a religious station, and left. The murders were not discovered until December the 7th, nearly a month later, due in part to the family's reclusive tendencies and in part notes sent to John, the murderer, because his son's name was John as well, but the murderer, to his children's schools and part-time jobs, claiming that the children would be visiting their very poorly maternal grandmother in North Carolina for a couple of weeks. Helen's mother, in fact, was ill and had cancelled a visit to Westfield because of it. Had she made the trip, John later said she would have been his 6th victim. So John also stopped milk, mail and newspaper deliveries coming to the house. Neighbours noticed that all of the mansion's rooms were lit up night and day, with no apparent activity in the house. After the light bulbs began burning out one by one, they called the police. Officers entered through an unlocked window leading to the basement and discovered the family's bodies. Westfield, which had a few violent crimes recorded since 1963, received national attention as the site of one of the most notorious felonies in New Jersey since the kidnapping and murder of Charles Lindbergh Jr. A worldwide manhunt was launched. Police investigated hundreds of leads with no success. All reliable photographs of John had been destroyed. The family car, a green 1963 Chevrolet Impala sedan, was found parked at the JFK airport in New York City, but police found no evidence that he had boarded a flight. Alma, his mum, Alma's body was flown to Michigan and interred at the St. Lawrence Lutheran Cemetery. Helen and her 3 children were buried at Fairview Cemetery in Westfield. Breeze Knoll remained empty, that's the mansion where they lived, until it was destroyed by fire in August 1972, 9 months after the murders. Although the destruction was officially ruled arson, it remains unsolved with no suspects. Destroyed, along with the home, was the ballroom's stained glass skylight, rumoured to be a signed Tiffany original worth at least $100,000 at that time. It's the equivalent to $700,000, now. A new house was built on the site in 1974. In 1971, as FBI later discovered, John had travelled by train from New Jersey, first to Michigan, then to Colorado. He settled in Denver in 1972 and took an accounting job under the name of Robert Peter, known as Bob Clark, one of his college classmates. Although the real Bob Clark later stated that he had never known John. Interesting. From 1979 to 1986, he worked at a paper box manufacturer outside Denver. He joined a Lutheran congregation and ran a carpool for church members without transport. What a nice man. At one religious gathering, he met an army clerk named Dolores Miller, and they were married in 1985. In February 1988, the couple moved into a house in the Brander Mill neighborhood, Midlothian in Virginia, where John was still using the name Bob Clark. He resumed work as an accountant at a small accounting firm. In 1972, John was proposed as a suspect in the D.P. Cooper air piracy case because of the timing of his disappearance 2 weeks prior to the airline hijacking, multiple matches to the hijacker's description, and the reasoning that, quote, a fugitive accused of mass murder has nothing to lose, end quote. John was questioned by FBI investigators after his capture, but he denied any involvement in the Cooper case. While his name is still occasionally mentioned in the Cooper articles and documentaries, no direct evidence implicates him, and the FBI no longer considered him a suspect. He must have such an inflated sense of ego. He wiped out his whole family, and all they're interested in is, the hijacking. In May 1989, the 18-year-old crime was recounted on the Fox television program America's Most Wanted during its first year on the air. The segment featured an age-progressed clay bust sculpted by forensic artist Frank Bender, which turned out to bear a close resemblance to John's actual appearance. On June the 1st, less than 2 weeks after the broadcast, John was arrested at Richmond accounting firm after a Denver neighbor recognized the description and told authorities. John continued to stand by his alias for several months, even after his 1989 extradition to Union County, New Jersey, and finally faced with the untold built-up evidence, including a fingerprint match to his military records, as well as evidence found at the crime scene. He confessed his true identity on the 16th of February in 1990. At trial, John testified that his financial difficulties reached crisis level in 1971 when he was laid off with the closure of the Jersey City Bank. To avoid sharing this humiliating development with his family, he engaged in the same routine and dress when he was employed, leaving home each morning on schedule, spending the day at job interviews, at the train station, reading newspapers, until it was time to come home. He diverted money from his mother's bank accounts to avoid default on his mortgage, and as the year progressed, the family's financial problems became more and more strained. John encouraged his children to seek part-time work, partly to teach them maturity and responsibility, but in actual fact to help keep the family financially going. He was also dealing with his wife's alcoholism and her untreated syphilis, contracted from her first husband and concealed for 18 years. And I think if it's not treated, it kind of drives you. And she probably turned to alcohol to cover up the symptoms. And I don't know about this time frame, but it's pretty easily cured. According to trial testimony, Helen had pressured John into marriage by falsely claiming that she was pregnant, then insisted that they marry in Maryland, which did not require the premarital syphilis test mandated in most other states at that time. Ooh, she's clever. Though her health progressively deteriorated, she said nothing to John or her doctors until 1969. Then a thorough examination revealed the condition. By then, progression of the disease combined with her excessive alcohol, according to testimony, transformed her into an unkempt, paranoid recluse who frequently and often publicly humiliated John, comparing his sexual prowess unfavourably of that to her first husband, which I find ironic because he gave you syphilis. A court-appointed psychiatrist testified that John suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder and that he saw only two solutions to his situation: accept welfare or kill his family and send their souls to heaven. Welfare was an unacceptable option, he reasoned, because it would expose him and his family to ridicule and violate his kind of bossy nature regarding, the care and protection of his family members. On April the 12th, 1990, he was convicted for 5 counts of first-degree murder. At his sentencing hearing, he denied direct responsibility for his actions. Quote, "I feel that because of my mental state at the time, I was unaccountable for what happened. I ask all affected by this for their forgiveness, understanding and prayer. The judge, unpersuaded. John Emil List is without remorse and without honour. After 18 years, 5 months and 22 days, it is now time for the voices of Helen, Alma, Patricia, Frederick and John F. List to rise from the grave. He imposed a sentence of 5 terms of life imprisonment to be served consecutively, the maximum permissible penalty at the time. Of course, John filed an appeal of his convictions on the grounds that his judgment had been impaired by post-traumatic stress disorder due to his military service. He also argued that the letter left behind at the crime scene, essentially his confession, was a confidential communication to his pastor and therefore inadmissible as evidence. A federal appeals court rejected both arguments. He eventually expressed a degree of remorse for his crimes. Quote, "I wish I had never done what I did." End quote. "I've regretted my action and prayed for forgiveness ever since." When asked why he hadn't taken his own life, he said he believed that suicide would have prevented him from going to heaven, where he hoped to be reunited with the family. And how warped do you have to be? Like, seriously, how warped? John died of complications from pneumonia at the age of 82 on March the 21st, 2008, while imprisoned at the St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. And there you go. So basically he killed his whole family for money. Not to save their souls, not for any other reason. But yeah, I thought this deserved its own episode. So, wow. 18 years of freedom. And finally justice for all those family members came. 18 years freedom. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. I will be back next week. I'll be talking, you'll see. How I came across this case was his name appeared in an article linked to another murder, completely unrelated. So I decided to share it with you guys. And yeah, wow. I will be back next week with another true crime. And I will see you tomorrow on my live at 8 p.m. my time. And stay safe out there. Bye.